Hey there, everyone, and welcome back to the Brand Bite podcast. I'm so freaking excited to be having this conversation today with our guest, Becca Bix. So Becca is the creator behind Women Play D&D, which is a platform that celebrates and uplifts women and marginalized voices in tabletop gaming. She shares education, behind-the-scenes content from real D&D campaigns, and community stories that highlight creativity, community, and inclusivity. She also runs a weekly beginner-friendly D&D class for queer, neurodivergent, and disabled players that's a welcoming space for new and veteran players alike, centered on fun, belonging, and the magic of collaborative storytelling. Now, I was very, very excited to bring Becca onto the show, and I'm so excited for her to tell us about her experience. And so, Becca, I want to ask you this first question that really struck me when I found you on Threads, which is what experience led you to starting this brand in the first place?
Well, thanks for having me, Hunter. It is a joy to get to be on the show, and I'm really excited to chat about it. I started this brand about a year ago when I was sitting down for my very first game of D&D with a couple of friends I invited. One had played for about 20 years. Everybody else had never played before. And I thought, I could figure this out. How hard can it be? Boys do it all the time. And we sat down to play the game, and it went bad. It went really bad. It was awful. It was hard to get into it. The rules were overwhelming. My ADHD was all over the place. And I told my friends, this is so hard. I bet I could write a book that would make it easier to learn how to play. And my friends were like, I bet you could. And I was like, I bet I could. And so I started researching, are there any books out there where you can learn to play D&D? You can just pick it up and learn, which there are not. Are there any books out there directed specifically at women and marginalized folks? Which the answer is there are a couple and they're bad. And so I was thinking about how can I get this book written? And the research online said that if you want to write a book, you need to have an audience. And so I started Women Play D&D to build an audience.
Really love that. And I love that you are out here searching for resources and finding, okay, there's not any good ones, so I need to build this. This is what we need more of now. I also want to ask for anyone who's listening who's like, what the fuck is D&D? Will you let everyone know so that they are in the loop for the rest of our conversation?
Yes, that is such a good question and one I get all the time. D&D is a tabletop role-playing game, and the way I like to explain it to people is that we are just playing pretend. When you were little, you might have played pretend by playing house. One of us is the mom, one's the dad, one's the baby. Now we're playing pretend, except we're on an adventure, and one of us is an elf with a bow, and one of us is a little hobbit with a short sword, and maybe we're going to rescue a princess, or maybe we're just going to fight a patriarchal religious order and tear it to the ground. There's so many different ways it can go, and there are rules, lots of rule books, lots of guidelines. But the biggest thing to remember about D&D and tabletop gaming is that it's all up to your table and specifically your DM, which is your dungeon master or dungeon moderator. And that's the storyteller who's in charge of the world you're playing in, all of the other characters in this world, and any information you're going to get about it. And so it's a game where you sit down, one of you is the DM, the rest of you are players, and the DM will present a scene, say, you're in a dungeon, you can't see anything, it's dark, and the players will say, do I have any matches? Can I check the gate? And we go back and forth like that, where the DM presents a scenario and the players respond to it. And the fun thing about D&D is there's no winner. Nobody's trying to win or beat anybody else. We're all just going on an adventure and telling a story together.
I often like to think of it kind of as this choose your own adventure, right? You've got your DM who is leading, right? They kind of know what's happening behind the scenes, but all of your players, as I've been told, because I've been so scared to play D&D. I have wanted to learn how to play, but have been so intimidated and scared. And so that's one of the reasons why I actually reached out to Becca, because I'm like, I know I am not the only bitch out here who is like, how do I do this?
So true. So true.
So I'm so glad that you're here having this conversation. And so something that I really wanted to ask when I reached out is why the focus on women and marginalized people in particular? I have my own opinions or guesses as to why it is, but I want to see what you say first, and then we can riff on that.
Well, it goes back to that first searching I was doing where I was like, why is this so hard? Why is it so hard for anybody to learn? And so I decided to dive into the history of the game. After I realized there were no easy to learn books, I thought, well, there's got to be a reason that it got this way. So I started doing research on the inventor. I'll put quotation marks around that because he invented / stole a bunch of stuff, Gary Gygax. And the other man who invented it, his name was Dave Arneson, and this was in 1974. And these were two men who were members of high control religions who were doing evangelical work to spread that. And so, and the game came from a culture called wargaming, which was tabletop with tiny little metal miniatures that were reenacting actual battles, like the Battle of Napoleon or the Revolutionary War, and you're rolling dice to see which side wins. And that culture was already so steeped in just middle class cishet men. And when Gary and Dave wrote this game, those biases were written into the game as well. There were things like women couldn't have as high of a strength stat as a man, for example, because you can't carry as much stuff as a boy can. There was a table written for rolling for which kind of prostitute you were going to get and how attractive she is when you go to a brothel. And there were just many, many examples of that were much more blatant than I expected, honestly. When I dove into it, I was like, it's probably not going to be that bad. And then it was worse. So once I saw that the game had come from this incredibly bigoted place, to be frank, but it has expanded into such a wide reach in the culture now, I knew that unless we address where this game came from and the issues that it's still creating in the culture today, we're not going to open it up for these marginalized folks. And my work, starting with women because I am a woman, and then expanding towards anyone who has been marginalized and made to feel lesser or not welcome in these spaces. And I also discovered that when I was going into physical spaces like game stores and conventions, I was still having uncomfortable experiences. This is not something that just happened in the past and is done now. It's still happening to women and marginalized folks all the time.
Yes, like I am a hoe for a strategy game. Like I love a board game store. I'm like, get me in there, let's play. And I feel that like what you just described is what I feel every time I enter one. And I recently moved and kind of lost my board game friends that I was playing with because I'm not there in person anymore. And I've been so intimidated to find a new group because any facility that I enter, I'm like, these people don't look like me.
And that's
like,
a very common recommendation is they say, go to your local game store. But if you go in there, you're going to see cishet white dudes for the most part. Or is that like across the board? Everyone? No, of course, because there's nuance in any conversation we have. But in general, these are not welcoming and safe spaces. I went to a con recently and there was a guy afterwards. I was talking on a panel and he was like, I can get you gaming space at any of the tables in town. And I said, I don't go to any of the tables in town because I can't recommend them for the people that I'm playing with. It's not safe for them. And he was like, oh yeah, it's terrible. It's not good. And I was like, so why are you bringing it up with me, man? Why are you telling me to go if you know it's not going to be safe?
Right. Well, what then are some of the things that you are doing with your brand and your business to bring that safety in, to make this more accessible, to address the, pardon me, but bullshittery that
big
it
bullshittery.
was founded on?
The biggest thing is that I am not trying to bring inclusion to gaming spaces. I am building new spaces that are already inclusive and bringing gaming into those. The place in town where I hold my games is called Celestia Collective, and it's a third space, first of all. And for those who may not know, a third space is a place where you can exist without spending money. That's outside of home, which would be your first space, and work, which would be your second one. And common examples include libraries and parks and stuff, but those aren't always accessible. So Celestia Collective is one of these places, and it has a private coffee club that you can join as well. And it is a haven for witches and queers and weirdos. And I ran into somebody who knew those folks who runs a different metaphysical store here in town. And I was like, hey, do you guys have a D&D group? And she said, I don't have the space for it, but you should check out Celestia Collective. So I went and met with them, and they were like, we would love to have you build a gaming. We have so many people here who want to learn to game. And being in that space brought the inclusivity, because that space already has a code of conduct and already has messaging and already has advertising that is attracting people who need a safe space to game. Trans folks, people of color are all joining my games here. And those people I would never find going into a game store in the mall because that's not going to be safe. So I target spaces like that to host my games so that it's physically safe for us, most of all. And then I'm really fucking loud online and I piss off a lot of men. One of the things that I learned when I first started at Celestia was that the name Women Play D&D would be a red flag for some trans folks, because that can be used to exclude trans women if you're saying, women. And so I immediately got advice from the trans community to be louder about being more about being protective of trans women and saying you are welcome here too. And being in those spaces, it's the power of community, it's being in this community where I'm just learning from other people of who they are makes my advocacy louder and braver and bolder. And it feels very sacred.
Yeah. Well, so I'm going to look at this obviously from like a branding and business perspective. Like I absolutely love the approach that you took where you understood like my people that I am trying to target are not going to be in these traditional game shops. They're not going to feel safe. This is not a place that they're going to be frequenting. And if I'm trying to invite them into there, if they have a poor experience, which there's a good chance they will, they're not going to want to come back. And so I love that you knew that about your audience and decided, okay, how am I going to build this brand and where am I going to build this that is inviting of them? And you reach out to people. I call this, I'm not going to call it competitors, right? But they're like your collaborators. So you have like these metaphysical shops that attract the same people. And so you're like, yeah, let's get in contact with them. I freaking love what you have done to build this foundation here. I think it is so, so smart from a business and branding perspective. And I think it is so needed from a like gaming perspective. Again, like as someone who's been terrified to try out D&D myself because I've not found like that space. So I want to talk and kind of switch us a little bit over into the online or like the weekly beginner friendly D&D that you offer. Because I know you've got an online community as well. So how does that play into this and tie in?
Yeah, I have a very healthy Discord server that is almost up to 600 members at this point. And it is a real hub for people who have found me as a brand and want to find more people who are interested in what's going on there. And so that is where I hosted my latest round of my Learn to Play class. I teach an 8-week ongoing adventure where you are rolling dice before you're even learning any of the rules, because I believe that people can play without having to know any of the lore or any of the background, because I believe that the game should be fun from the very beginning. And I like to introduce the vocabulary and all of the things you need to teach the game in little tiny bits as you go along in play, because that's how I learn. When I tried looking through the handbook beforehand, it'd kill me. I didn't want, it was brutal. So I have the class recorded and up there now. I'm actually taking a break from teaching the class in the spring so that I can turn it into a book where I will be writing so that people can take the book to their game night, open it up, and I'm going to write it with as little prep as I possibly can, because I'm thinking of the person who has ADHD and is like, I'm not going to be able to remember anything. I want you to be able to open the book and be like, okay, everybody, I'm going to read this, and then we're going to start playing. And so the online space is a great place for me to get feedback on what's going on, to spark ideas and creativity from everyone else. I mean, you never need AI for anything, but especially not for D&D when there are so many people in here who are ready to give you ideas and bounce things off of each other. It is a community game, and it is a community joy space. So I'm really loud online so that people can find that brand so that they can then connect with other people who have these values that I do.
Yeah. Well, speaking of values, like I'd love to dive into some of those, because I know that a lot of people, especially in the current climate that we are existing in, are reaching for brands that share the same values as them. And so what are your values at Women Play D&D?
I love that question. My values had been defined. This work is in a lot of ways a direct response to the inauguration in January. I had spent my time from when the election happened in November to January locked in with my therapist, being like, what am I going to do that's going to make a difference, that's going to make me feel empowered? And then when I found this intersection of D&D needs a voice to speak up for marginalized people, kind of aggressively, I said, I feel like I could be that voice. And my therapist was like, you could be that voice. And I was like, somebody's got to do it, right? Why not me? I know very deeply that in order to transfer ideas, there has to usually be a parasocial relationship. We look for leaders, we look for people who we can emulate. And so it matters to me to be that voice. And the values that guide me through that are community, compassion, and connection. Community being, I believe that we are more powerful together than we are apart. And I believe that D&D can build intimate, in-person communities that can be something that gives you life back. Compassion is the second one because it starts with me. I have learned that self-compassion is the way to my own power. When I am kind to myself, it expands outward in ways that I never could have known. And so when I'm asking myself, do I want to do this? Is it compassionate to me? And then it will become naturally compassionate to other people. And then connection, I know that we are all seeking connection. I'm desperately seeking connection with people all the time. And I want that connection to be real and sustained and life-bringing. And so those are the three values that guide every choice I make.
Really, really love that. And I love that you're making values-based decisions. And I can see that in the way that you're showing up in this brand and business. So thinking about community, because I know that community is the top one you listed. It is rooted in so much of what I have seen you do and what you are doing. How does D&D outside of the game help people build community? Because I've done some research myself about like the way that D&D actually can impact people outside of it just being a game itself and like the way that that can bleed over. But I'd love to hear what you have learned in your research as well.
I'd love to give you a really practical example, which is that I started this whole thing and made it my whole personality so that I could become a player in an ongoing game. Because I was like, if the only way to start playing this game is to make it radically accepting to people, then like, let's go. And my last in-person learn to play class that wrapped up in September was so successful that two of the women in the group decided to become co-DMs and take over the adventure, and they invited me to return as a player. So now I get to play every Sunday at Celestia Collective. We all get our little coffees and teas, and sometimes we'll bring bagels, and we sit down, and the building is all purple. It's just a lovely space. And now it's become more than that. We get there a little bit early and we check in on each other's lives. We stay a little bit later and we ask, how's your kid doing after that appointment this week? We have a group chat where we get to, it started on Instagram, you know, where we were sending memes. And then a few weeks ago, it moved into that. Well, I think we need everybody's phone numbers now because we're at that place. And so the relationships are really building. And just yesterday, one of the players was like, it's my birthday this weekend. I just moved to town. I don't really have anybody to hang out with. Do you guys want to come over and play D&D? And I was like, hell yeah, of course I want to play D&D. And they were like, will you run your Barbie one shot for us? And I was like, of course I'll run my Barbie one shot. And so now this weekend, I get to go hang out with my friends and play pretend because I have friends that want to be around me and want to play pretend. And I know they care deeply about the same values that I do because I'm so loud about these values up front. And I am attracting and building relationships that make a big difference. I have people I can text, you know? I have people that know things about me and care and ask follow-up questions. And you can get that in so many different spaces. You can get it at work. You can get it from church. You can get it from your neighborhood. But if you don't have those spaces, D&D is a really efficient way to build that. Because you can set up beforehand, here's going to be the boundaries and guidelines of this campaign, which then turn into some of the boundaries and guidelines of our friendships as well. And we know beforehand that I'm inviting you in and that you are welcome to be here and that we are learning together. So it's made, for me, and I know for my players in that group, it's made a real impact on our actual physical lives.
I really, really love that. And I feel like it's something that I have heard from a number of my friends who play D&D that like we're hanging out outside of the group. And it's like, I met this person here through this D&D group, but now like we chat about these other things, or they connected me with this other great person. And I feel like it's a great way to almost step back into the, like you said, that childhood pretend that we used to play all the time and bring that creativity back out. And this is another question that I really want to ask you, is that focus on creativity and how playing D&D can help you become a more creative person.
Yeah. I grew up believing I wasn't creative, that creativity was for other people. And in the tapping back into the play, what I've noticed is that my creativity has been there all along, but she was too scared to speak up. She wasn't trusted when I was little. And that makes sense because of the life circumstances I was going through. But now it's safe for her to come out and bring these ideas. And when you have a safe group that welcomes those ideas, builds on the ideas, takes them off, and makes them an ongoing bit, it makes it so much easier to be creative. I have a friend in my weekly game, and she told us all this week that since we started playing, she's been drawn to sketching and collage and writing in ways that she hasn't felt in years. Our DM dropped out of college halfway through because she was burned out. The writing program destroyed her love of writing. And now she's back into, she's like, I have whole plots. I could write a whole narrative out of this. And it's something about that group creativity and the feedback you're getting, the validation that your joke actually is really funny and that you can be really humorous, and the real reactions you get. Our bard, for those who are listening, a bard is a character that magic comes from performance, either music or dance or poetry, and usually they're very outgoing and brash, and they have this stereotype of like wanting to hit on everything. But our bard is very reserved, and our bard is new to music, and he's not sure. And this week he said, I take out my lute and play a song. And at the table, all of us gasped because we were so excited that he was going to play a song. And that gave that player the reassurance that, yes, we do want your character to take risks. We do want you to talk about him, and we want to hear all about him. And it brings like that childhood whimsy up. And that's why it matters to me to make it so clear that you need safety at a table, because this creativity is not accessible if the table is not safe.
Exactly. Well, and I feel like this, as you talked about, like it opens doors to these other areas of people's lives that they may not even have known were closed off because of various circumstances or because of trying to show up in spaces that weren't safe, and then kind of experiencing a backlash that may not have been accurate, right? But is then internalized. And I think that we see this a lot in business too, where you think of traditional networking spaces are a lot of like middle-aged cis white het men, just hanging out, passing around their business cards, playing golf. And women are like, what are we supposed to do here? Queer people are like, what the hell am I supposed to do here?
Yeah.
Like this isn't a safe space. And so having that space to show up as yourself, experiment too, as a different part of yourself, play with a different part of yourself. Like you discover so much in that. And I see this a lot with businesses that I help do the branding for. Like we have this kind of playing that happens, and they learn so much more about themselves as a business because that space is there to play. And so I freaking love, like I can't say this enough, Becca, like what you are doing and the mission behind it. So why do you think this is so important, especially as we enter 2026? Like why is what you are doing so important?
We need each other. We need each other. And we are restricted in power in so many ways right now. There are restrictions on how we can express ourselves. There are restrictions on how we can live. There are restrictions on how much money we can access. And the power that we always have is ourselves, and that expands towards community. And I have this dream that I can help facilitate groups all over the world that maybe I never even know existed, but something I said helped them get it going. And every community that this creates gets to build their own power and gets to build connection, because we are in this time of online. And my goal is to get people playing together in person to have that connection that I talked about as my values. I want so badly for people to have deeper connections with other humans, to hear their stories, to learn from people who aren't like them, because it only makes us better. Every time we communicate with others, it makes us better. And so the more D&D groups I can make, the closer we get to overthrowing the government. That's what I think.
And I think that it is something that, as you said, like it's so needed right now. Like we are seeing a lot of kind of tumultuous behavior online and around us, and we've been siloed, during the lockdowns that occurred over the pandemic. And I feel like, and I talk to my partner about this all the time, where I'm like there has been a huge shift in the way that people interact together post that experience. And so many people now are online. And like, I would consider myself a fairly outgoing person, and post like pandemic lockdown, I feel like a middle schooler again. Like I am like at the dance, I'm against the bleachers, not sure what to do. And so I love that you are creating these spaces and on this mission to build more of that connection and that community and get people together in person again. And ideally in spaces that aren't going to cost an arm and a leg, like go have fun, go be a kid again. And remember what life is like when you're in that play arena. I do have a couple more questions I want to ask you. One of which is, I know you've got the book that you're working on. What else are you tackling this year?
I am pretty single-mindedly. I tested my Learn to Play class 4 times last year because that was the curriculum framework that is going to become the book. So I am pretty single-mindedly transitioning over to writing now, where I want to get something written and then get it out to DMs so they can test it with new players in their areas. I have lots of women interested in starting up chapters of their own Women Play D&D games at spaces in their cities. And once I have this written, I can give it to them and see if it works. That's my big excitement, is I've been able to transfer some of the knowledge I have into players. Can I now transfer it into a document that if I give to someone else, they don't need me there? That would be really exciting if I could do that. I also have longer term plans, and I'm always continually doing research on this, to write an intersectional feminist history of the game. I would love to tell the stories of the women and queer and people of color folks who have been a part of this game all along, but who are not in the history books. And I know because I've read the history books, and I know because people have told me, you should look into this person. And I look into, for example, Elise Gygax, Gary Gygax's daughter, was at the first game of D&D. She had a hand in naming it D&D, and we don't know anything about her. She's never been interviewed. There is a woman named Lorraine Williams who owned the D&D company for 10 years, from the mid 80s to the mid 90s. And all I can find online about her is how she was overweight and mean. And I'm like, I bet there's another side to that story that I would love to hear from Lorraine, because I bet that being the head of a gaming company as a woman in the 80s was not great. So that's my next passion, is to find these missing stories and write them down so that we can see the impact that has been there all along.
I love this. Like, I feel like I'm getting goosebumps as you're talking about it. I'm like, this is really what we need.
It's really fun. I'm telling you, I went full special interest on this, and it's been really paying off, because I found this at a time when my creativity met my activism, met a special interest, and I don't think it had to be D&D. It could have been something else, but it just came along at the right time.
Well, I am so grateful that it did, because I am loving this conversation, and I feel like it's giving me even like more confidence to show up.
Yeah, you would love it. You would love it. It's so fun. It's so fun to play pretend.
Now, I have 2 more questions for you, Becca. The first one is one that I ask everyone, which is, what is something that you love about your current brand?
I love that I've picked pink to be my branding color. I have tried different projects in the past and tried to do coloring that, would have been well advised. And this time I was like, I'm not going to do what is advised. I'm going to do what is me, because this is going to be me doing this brand. And so it is aggressively pink because I am aggressively pink, and it is loud because I am loud. And it is single-minded in a lot of ways. I know what my values are. I know what colors I want it to be. I know what my message is, and I stick to that, and I feel empowered when I do that.
Yeah. And what is something that you would like to improve about your brand?
I think I would like to find someone who knows about business things and have them do those things, so I don't have to do that part. Because I had to write one invoice this year and I almost died, but I got through it. It was really rough. But I don't have a desire to make money, but I also do. And I need help. I need help with that part. And so I'm exploring, and I've had lots of cool connections with that. But I also am taking this at the pace of me. And I made myself a promise when I started that if it wasn't fun along the way, I would pause, slow down, readjust. And so I'm not that stressed out about figuring it out because it'll happen when it needs to.
Yes. Well, I love that you are taking this at your pace. Like you're not being influenced by everything around you. Like you know where you're headed, you know the steps. And listening to you talk, like I can very clearly see like the planning and prep that has gone into this. Like even just with like, okay, I have this curriculum, like I tested it here in like the online course. Now I'm ready to shift it onto writing. And now I want to send it out and test that before we like go even bigger. It's like you're taking those steps and I am loving every single bit of it and cannot wait to keep following along on your journey. Now, how can people get in contact with you, Becca? So if anyone wants to find your courses or join your Discord or anything like that, where do they find you?
The easiest place is you're going to go to Instagram.com and look up Women Play D&D. I'm also on Threads. I'm not on the TikTok, so you won't find me there. I also have a website, womenplaydnd.co, and our Discord. The Discord link is going to be on my Instagram, on my Threads, on my website, and that's the place where if you want to be an intimate conversation, that's where I'm the most accessible.
Perfect. And everyone, I will put all those links there in the show notes for you so you can access them. Please reach out to Becca, learn more about D&D, play some yourself, get yourself some dice, like just be a kid again. I promise
You're
you
ready.
it's going to serve you in many other areas of your life. And I'm about to start doing some research to see how it can serve you in your business too. So that's a video to come, folks. But Becca, seriously, thank you for coming on.
Thank you, Hunter. I'm so glad to be here.